Hey everybody, it's Stratosphere Lounge, episode 99. While the red lights are on, that means they're recording. That's always a good sign. And it's been a month. I think it's been a solid month since we were here last. Lots of reasons for that, some of which I can go into. But sorry about the delay. I know I didn't feel bad about missing the first week, but I felt bad about missing the second week, and then the third week was really bad, and then the fourth week was just unbearable. Anyway, I got a bunch of really fun stuff to show you and play with tonight. So we have a big show. We got a lot of questions to answer. Got more elements in this show than I think in any of the other shows combined. We got a bunch of stuff. So what I thought I'd do is spend the first part talking a little aviation. I just got back, as you well know, from Oshkosh. And I had maybe the time of my life. Absolutely had just about the time of my life out there. There's just a few pictures, and some of them I've already put up on Facebook. The other ones I want to give a little narration on. And I do have something we haven't seen before hiding here somewhere. Got a little 8-minute video of from GoPro footage on the outside of my airplane. Got a little airplane story to tell about that too. So I think we ought to just cut right to the chase and just launch into it. We've got like I said, some great questions, and I know it's been a long time, so why don't we just get going? What I've got here is let me just move this up a little bit where I can see a little better. I've got a bunch of stuff to show you guys. I've got a bunch of stuff from Oshkosh, but for those of you that saw that Long Easy first flight video I did, that was on Saturday morning. Sunday morning, I flew up to Tehachapi, where a really terrific guy named Mark is doing some work on the airplane. Since each one of these experimental aircraft, like the Long Easy, are individual, they're individually made, really, in a big way. So the rudder pedals on the Long Easy that I bought are just a little bit too short, and it's not as easy as it sounds. A lot of aircraft have adjustable rudder pedals, but to get these to fit me, we had to actually lengthen the cables, and that took a fair amount of work. I flew up to Tehachapi. I'll show you that video in a second. And when I got up there, met again a person who I'd first met just a few days earlier on the pre-buy inspection done by the same guy up in Tehachapi. And that's Mike Melville. Mike is, for those of you who don't know who Mike Melville is, Mike Melville's, I think, the great unsung hero of aviation. I'm doing an afterburner with his name will be mentioned prominently. Mike is maybe the most skilled pilot I've ever met. He's certainly one of them, although I met a few on this last trip. Mike is the first civilian astronaut. I'll tell that story, like I said, in this a little bit more in the afterburner. I'll tell a little bit more of it coming up when I show some of these pictures. But he is as gentle and kind and gracious as a person could possibly be, and he offered to manufacture a couple of pieces I need to extend the cables and get the brakes to work. And he ended up working for 4 or 5 hours on my airplane. He wouldn't let me pay him. He said it'd be an insult. He's just an astonishingly great guy, and he's a legend. He's a legend. I'm not fit to get Mike's coffee. He wanted me to fly his airplane, which has flown around the world, I might add. Yeah, that was amazing. So, and then there's an interesting part of the story that happened after that. So let me just show you this video here. It's taken by a GoPro camera on the outside. I had one inside the cockpit too, but I couldn't get that thing. I started it, but it stopped running. It may be that I had to switch the Wi-Fi or something, but I've got a bunch of work to do before I get the GoPros up in the way I'm going. So this is just one camera angle. Total flight was about 25 minutes. I boiled this down to about 8, so we speed things up a little bit. And I think it's even going to work so that I can narrate it. So we should have some ambient sound and everything else. So anyway, this is what it looks like outside the brand new Long Easy flying from Van Nuys, California, up to Tehachapi. And I've got a couple of little screens that pop up, but hopefully I can do a running narration as well. So ready, and here we go. So there we are. We're taxiing onto the runway at Van Nuys, and I'm on the southwest corner, and Van Nuys is about 8,000, 9,000 foot runway almost, and that's well over a mile. So the taxi takes about an hour. An hour. It's about a mile. Sorry, it's about a mile. So we had to speed it up. We went to 10 times speed here to get us down to the end. There goes the tower on the left. 16 right, by the way, is a famous runway and a very famous airport. There's a documentary out there. If you're into aviation at all or have any desire to get into aviation, rent a movie. It's on I don't know if it's on Netflix, so I think it's on Apple Tunes. It's called 16 Right. It's a story of this airport, Van Nuys Airport. There goes the speed brake up, back to real time, and canopy comes closed. 16 Right is a great story about general aviation. It's beautifully shot, and I'm taking off on a real famous runway, so we got our clearance, and we're taxiing into position. We got the GoPro under the wing there, and we are shooting. This is at 1080 that it's being broadcast. I shot it at 2.5K. It'll shoot 4K with the fisheye lens. I'm going to be doing some modifications to the GoPro because I don't like the fisheye lens. And you're going to see an artifact coming up that I don't particularly like very much. So here we go. Let's line up on that center line. Now, I actually normally take off right on the center line, but I had a cozy pilot tell me I should actually stay off a little bit to the right or the left because these reflector lights, not reflector lights, the embedded runway lights, you see them go by right there, actually a little hard on the landing gear. So there we go, a little power, adding the power, power's coming in, and here we go. We're still before the displaced threshold, long displaced threshold on Van Nuys, running up our full power, coming up to the touchdown line, which is right there. A little back pressure in the nose gear comes off, and watch those mains just levitate, just perfect takeoff, just beautiful. You see some of this. About 70 knots on the rotation. It's about 85 miles an hour or so. So we're climbing out, and you're going to see a couple of little legends I put up in a minute. Let's bring that nose gear up. Wait, I'm going to go a little faster. But you can tell here, even compressed, that the landscape is doing something odd, and I only found out about it after I shot the video. GoPro has a problem on really bright days with something called the jello effect. You can see that jello effect there. It makes the landscape look like it's made out of jello. What's going on is the camera's getting bumped around a lot. Here comes some of the subtitles for that. It's a pretty bumpy day, and the wing is shaking. You can see the wing and the body shaking, and that shaking causes the shutter on the GoPro to do some unusual things. Basically, the short form is the shutter is taking a while to scan from the top to the bottom, and as it's shaking, the frame is actually changing. Our friend Eisenfire told me about that, actually, and now I get to see it. So I can fix it by stopping it down, by putting a neutral density filter in there. I can actually get that to go away, but I didn't know it until I shot it. But anyway, so we're not going to bore you with the whole trip, so we're coming out of the crosswind turn. Pretty soon we're heading downwind. Van Nuys Airport's now below us to the right, and we're going to kick up the speed here to about 20 times normal because the flight up is it's interesting for flying, but it's not so interesting for watching. That's Van Nuys, California, directly ahead of you there. Here we go, 20 times normal speed. Sorry about the bumpiness, but you can see we took a real beating up there. This is the Newhall Pass. Magic Mountain will be just ahead to the left. This is the 14 freeway leading up to Palmdale out to the right there. I was keeping it pretty low because it was a hot day and I didn't want to climb. I wanted to get the nose down and let the engine work not quite so hard. So we're probably 5,500, maybe 6,000 feet going over these hills here. So this is Agua Dulce's off to the right. We're just leaving, heading north, and when we get over the last of these hills, we'll be in the by God Mojave Desert. There it is. Look like crops up ahead. I'm pretty sure those are solar cell panels down there. Foxfield is just off to the right, and we're still continuing over the Mojave. Mojave Airport is up and to the right there on the right side of that little distant kind of hill range you can see up there. Lots more stuff in the desert, lots and lots of windmills. It's hard to see. We're bumping around so much. We do slow it down in a minute. But we're coming up. Mojave's off to our right now. Here's a bunch of windmills, and we're going to cut that corner off, and we're going to turn a little bit to the left to the Tehachapi Valley. There's Tehachapi. I thought Tehachapi would be like Mojave, only without the charm. Mojave's not a particularly lovely place to live. It's a lot of aviation history there. But Tehachapi was lovely. Tehachapi is a beautiful little town. Just love it. You can see, put a little mark up there so you can see Tehachapi Airport. Sometimes hard to pick these things out if you're not knowing what you're looking for. So right now I'm about 1,000 feet above pattern altitude. I don't know what the winds are, so I wanted to fly over and take a look at the windsock down there, which I just did, dip the wing so I could look down. And this is the runway. It's 26 for memory. I've never landed there before, so I started a left-hand turn. This will be my third landing in the Long Easy. I did 2 touch and goes, and then this one. This airport's 4,000 feet, which is about half of Van Nuys. And the Long Easy does not want to slow down, so I flew a long downwind. There's another airport right there. It's right off the nose. It's Tehachapi Glider Port. You don't want to mistake those two. I'm going to stay out of their airspace. No steer coming down here. So now I am basically flying downwind. Tehachapi Airport's behind us and to the left. And I'm going to extend the downwind a little bit because in this particular landing, third landing in the airplane, about half the runway space I had, there is in fact plenty of runway for a long easy. You get a long easy in about 2,000 feet, but it's still new to me, and the plane comes in hot. So the reason I'm flying such a long downwind is I want to give myself plenty of time to get that speed under control and come in and make the approach at minimum safe approach speed, which is probably 80 knots over the threshold. So that's probably enough for me. Starting our left turn to left base now for Tehachapi. When I get that jello effect out of there, it'll be amazing because this is only 1080, but at 4K, I mean, you can see the individual leaves on these Joshua trees. So now we're on left base. We're going to continue that turnaround into left final. You'll see the runway appear underneath the wing, right above the canard there in a minute. Tehachapi's got such a great little town. I mean, downtown there is fantastic. It's just really sweet. We walked to a lot of cool restaurants and really you can see the wing right off the canard there. I'm sorry, the airport off the canard. I'll roll out of this turn here. Now the airport is right on the right margin, and the marker. So this camera is obviously looking forward and left. The speed breaks down. I've got the runway, got lots of altitude. I also have a lot of places I can land short if I need to. There's Tehachapi Airport. And basically, I am rather pleased with this landing. So we're slowing down. We're at, I don't know, probably 85 knots at this point. Slowing down, looking at the runway threshold, figuring out where our glide path is. That speed brake, which is extended, was not extended when I made my 105 knot over the threshold landing on the two flybys. It's got a switch that pulls it up, but to keep it down, you don't just hit the switch, you have to hold the switch, and I forgot about that. So here's probably about 80 knots, maybe 76 knots. Here's the threshold with the last of the trees go whizzing by. Now I have to cross that extended threshold. I'm not able to land short of that, so we pull it down here, and I think we'll just pull it off. There's a threshold, and just right on the center line, and credit where credit is due. We just go easy on the brakes. It turns out I had all the runway in the world. When you get your airspeed under control, landings are not a problem. It really is just nothing to it. So we'll just taxi off, and then we'll get on with some of the other pictures here. And it looks like we're starting again, so that's the happy ending. It just runs in a loop, apparently. But, you know, I've had a lot of things to say about Ustream and not being happy with a lot of it. But I will say this in its favor: that you can just drag and drop these images in there, and it's really friendly when it comes to that. So I certainly don't want to be bad-mouthing Ustream all the time. There's some things it does very well, and that's one of them. Okay, so here's the interesting news. So happy campers, this will be a bit of a fun experience for you. So I'm up there, flew up to Tehachapi. I'm there for several hours. I got there around noon, went out to lunch with Mike Melville and Mark, and had a great barbecue, great pilots, great flyers, and just terrific. And so then we came back to the hangar, and Mark extended the rudder cables, which took about 4 or 5 hours. A lot of manufacturing had to go on there. Mike Melville's in there machining parts, and they're absolutely gorgeous. They look absolutely spectacular. So I get in the airplane and I fire it up around 6 o'clock, which is no problem. It doesn't get dark till 8:30 around here now in the summertime. And get out of Tehachapi, lovely takeoff, fly down the hills, coming downhill this time, and plane's running just great, having a great time. And it's still kind of my first real flight. You know, all I'd done is two touch and goes the previous day, which I recorded, put online. So we're coming back to Van Nuys. I call in for Van Nuys, get my landing clearance, and ask for the option, which is the touch and go, where you don't make a full stop. Put the plane down, another beautiful landing, just a greaser of a landing. And since I'm right home at Van Nuys and I got my airplane and it fits and the rudder pedals fit in a way that they hadn't the day before, I go up and around, come back around for another pattern, do another great touch and go. Beautiful, fabulous. That's 2 wonderful landings, and then the one up at Tehachapi, which you just saw, which is great. So now I figure it's time for me to go out over Malibu, which is where I've done hundreds, probably hundreds of times in the Sky Arrow. So I power up on 16 right, climb out of 16 right, divert off to the right, heading for Encino Reservoir. Say goodbye to Van Nuys Tower, just out of their airspace out by Warner Center, by Encino Reservoir. And there's traffic coming in from the left, so I'm going to let this guy get out of the way. I start my left turn to go over the hills to get on the Malibu side of the mountains. And as I start the turn, all of a sudden the plane starts going, which is not something you particularly want to hear, actually. Okay, so we'll come back on the power right away because whatever it is related to the engine. Something's wrong. So full power back immediately, and then just start doing things kind of automatically. Full pump on. I turned on the backup pump. Normally, if the engine were to have a bad pump, it would probably just quit, but fuel pump comes on right away. Carb heat goes on right away. It's the desert in the summer, but you never know. As a carb ice, doesn't seem likely, but you just don't know. And the thing is shaking itself to pieces, frankly. The plane's in real trouble. So if your engine is shaking itself to pieces, the first thing you want to do is you want to cut back on the power. You want to eliminate the shake. So I just rolled it to idle and kind of happy with the way I handled this because basically did everything right away and turned off one set of magnetos and the engine was still running rough. And at that point, it actually started running rougher. And at that point, I stopped worrying about what the problem was because I was with a very, very sick engine. I was probably 6 miles away from Van Nuys Airport. And I was low. I want to say I was probably, maybe I was, just adjust the camera, maybe 2,000 feet above the ground, I would say, at 6 miles and sick engine. So at that point, it was no longer time to try and figure out what's wrong. It's time now to get the airplane on the ground. So I called Van Nuys. I didn't declare an emergency. I kept it in my pocket. I probably should have because it allows you to do certain things, but I'm one of those guys who don't like to make a fuss if I can help it. I've had 2 engine failures prior to this 3rd engine failure. And I didn't declare emergencies on either one of those because I didn't have to. So the first thing you do is, needless to say, back on the power. And actually, I have to say, the first thing I did was exactly the right thing. The second that plane started to shake, it just put the nose down, get this nose down. Last thing I want to do is run out of airspeed and when I'm at this kind of altitude. Let's make this thing a glider. I'm a glider pilot and how to handle gliders, and it's an excellent glider, the Long Easy. Very slick, very cool. Started the turn back to Van Nuys, and after I went through the quick, carb heat, fuel pump, mag check, I basically said, okay, Van Nuys Tower, got a problem with the engine. I need to come back home. And he was great. He said, 6 Delta Bravo, straight for the numbers. I'll give you 3-4 left, which is the same runway. It's the big runway. It's just going the other way. I'd taken off from 16 right, so I'm on that side of the airport. And because it was calm, he let me just basically come and land in the other direction, broke a couple of other people off, which was really cool. The Van Nuys Tower is one of the best towers in the world. And there we go. So we're just coming downhill, and plane is shaking badly. But at idle power, it's shaking less bad. And now, since I have a little bit of time, and since I'm established in a glide, and since I'm heading for the runway, I'm going straight for the. I'm heading straight for the numbers. I'm going to get this airplane on the ground. I'm going to fly the airplane. I'm not going to fly the engine. So we're heading for the numbers, and I've got a little time. In fact, the airplane glides so well, frankly, I wish I had a deck of cards to pass the time on the way down. Just limping this baby home, and I was able to find a power setting where the vibration wasn't as bad. It probably wasn't much power. It was probably around 1,200-1,300 RPM, which is not far from idle, but the Long Easy is so slick, so clean in the air, that it helped. So honestly, it was just a non-event. I've had 3 power failures, and all 3 of them happened in the vicinity of airports. One of them happened at 9,000 feet above the ground. I was further downrange, but another good gliding airplane. So she's just idling, and get her on the runway. Beautiful landing, if I do say so myself. Pulled off, and this is when my real anxiety hit me. It wasn't the anxiety about the engine failure. It was like, I don't want to push this airplane home on the second day that I own it. I don't want to push it home. I've pulled and pushed the velocity off of that runway 5 times, and I didn't want to push it. But I'm on the ground, so, main problem solved. So I get off the ground, I get off the runway, contact Van Nuys ground, and honestly, guys, the engine is going no engine, not metal sounds, but just really, really sick engine. And I said, I don't think I can keep this thing idling. Got the clearance to taxi back to the hangar. Hangar wasn't too far from where I'd stopped, and she's just choking and coughing, and I'm just goosing the throttle, just trying to keep her running, although the risk is completely gone at this point. There's no more risk to me. Now it's just pride, really. It's just pride. And I was able to limp it down to the hangar. And I have to tell you, it's funny how your mind works. I was much, much, much calmer when the engine failed in the air until I got the wheels on the ground. And when I was at the hold line, just over the hold line in the taxi, that was the part that made me kind of anxious. It's like, can I please get this airplane to the hangar under its own power? Please. And I did. So I got out and I made a couple calls, and a number of people sprang to the rescue. And the short form is that was back on the 12th, and today's the 29th? Yeah. So it's been a couple of weeks without an airplane. Actually, the emergency didn't bother me, and it never has bothered me. When I get in trouble, I usually respond pretty well. It wasn't out of gas, and it wasn't water in the tank. Thank you for all of your concerns there. I have a suspicion. I don't know it. I'm going to speculate because I'm not, in a court of law. There's a Clavin admits nothing. Brent, you win the internet for the day. Clavin did it. Yeah, it was Clavin and his mind control ray that he zapped the airplane with. There are a number of different ignition systems. The aircraft has my Sky Arrow. Somebody asked what happened to the Sky Arrow. I owned the Sky Arrow with my girlfriend at the time named Dana, and Dana now has moved up to the Bay Area. She's got a terrific boyfriend. He's a former Air Force pilot, U-2 pilot. He owns 17 airplanes. Now they own 18. I'd flown that airplane for 9 years, and she deserved a chance to fly it. So I still own half of it, and we'll see it again. It's a lovely airplane. I couldn't bear to part with it. But she flew it away, and it was hard. It was hard to watch it go. But it's in a good home, and she's very happy, and God knows that she's earned her time with the Sky Arrow. But anyway, that didn't bother me on the day. And afterwards, I remember we're trying to figure out what the problem was. So there are these things called magnetos, and magnetos are very old technology. They're 100 years old, at least, I would say. And basically what a magneto does is it makes a spark. Now, on your car, the spark comes off of your battery, and the engine charges the battery. This is a distinction, but it's a distinction with an importance. However, if your battery dies in your car, let me rephrase that. If your alternator dies in your car, your alternator is not charging the battery off of the engine, and your battery will run down, and then your lights will get dim, and then after your radio goes out and your lights get dim, then the car will stop because it's the battery that's making the spark. A magneto, which is heavy and kind of clumsy and very mechanical, you can't adjust it the way you can adjust electronic ignition. But the magneto has one cardinal virtue, and the magneto virtue is this. The magneto makes its own spark from the engine power. The turning of the engine makes the spark. So as long as you've got gas in an automobile engine, as long as you've got gasoline in your airplane engine, you are not going to lose the ignition, because as long as the plane's got gas, it's making its own spark. The mechanical force of the engine turning creates its own spark. You can take the battery and just chuck it overboard, and you can still fly. So the plane as I bought it had a magneto on one side for reliability, and the other side had an electronic ignition system. Now these are very, very good. There's some excellent ones out there. But the one I have is called a PMAG, and I never heard of it before. But a PMAG is a combination of an electronic ignition system and the magneto. They tried to get both, and it turns out they didn't really get either. I'm not convinced that the PMAG is the problem, but it's the most likely candidate, so let's just be clear on that. I don't want to slander the PMAGs. But a lot of people have had problems with them. And because I've, after the fact, did a lot of research, there have been enough people who've had enough problems with them that they're coming off of my airplane. I'm going to go to 2 standard magnetos, just like the Sky Arrow and just like every Cessna out there. And then eventually I will get an electronic ignition system on one side, and after I've flown with that a bunch of times, I might get another one. If you have 2 electronic ignition systems and I convert the plane to fuel injection, then I get something that I actually quite want, although it's expensive. It's going to be probably 10 grand to do this on and off when you count the cost of all of it together. If you get rid of the carburetor and you get electronic ignition system and fuel injection, then you can throw away the mixture control, you can throw away the carb heat, and you have a power lever, and the computer is constantly adjusting your engine for maximum efficiency and power. The way that my Camaro does. Fires on the first blade the way my Camaro does. Modern cars with electronic ignition, they start on the first, they just start. You have to be of a certain age now to remember going out and starting a car and having a young, 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 young. I'd like to get that on the airplane, but if you want to become a Billwiddle.com member and help me get an electronic ignition system, we sure would appreciate it. Anyway, that's that. So I've got some great people on the job stepped up to volunteer, and I'm still trying to figure out what's wrong. As of this moment, as of this taping, I still don't know what's wrong with the airplane, how long it's going to take to fix, or how much money it's going to take. But I do have some good people on the job. But that was Sunday, and I went home fine. Okay, these things happen. These things happen. Monday, I woke up and I wanted to take a chainsaw to the airplane. I just did. I'd been wanting this thing for 3 months. I picked this airplane 3 months before. I spent virtually all the money I had on it and just bought it. And I just it's like I'm like Henry VIII, and I've got a picture of Catherine of Aragon. I've got a little cameo this big, and I'm waiting. And finally meet her, and she's gorgeous, and everything's great. And then the next day, gone. I had an airplane for a day. With that said, I'm doing better now. It's funny how your mind works. I don't even know if we're going to get to any questions tonight. We'll get to some. It's funny how your mind works because, I had a long conversation with that aircraft before I flew it. This is the morning before I flew the flight that you saw with me getting in the airplane, doing the 2 touch and goes. Sat down, had a long, oh my God, Berkut 13 is here. You stick around, James Redmond. Don't you go anywhere. The psychology of these things is weird. I would have to describe myself as maybe the most unsuperstitious person in the world. I'm not superstitious at all. But airplanes are living creatures, and they have their own personalities, and they're like dogs or cats. They have their own personalities. And I sat down with this airplane before I flew it the first time, and I said, you and I are going to have an awful lot of fun. I'm the boss. I'm in charge. You take care of me, I'll take care of you. And for the airplane to do that and basically bite me that bad on the second day of ownership hurt. I know a lot of people think that's unreasonable, and it is. I'm willing to admit that it is unreasonable. Of course, it's a piece of plastic and metal. But nevertheless, I'd made a deal with that airplane, and it went back on the deal, and I was angry at the airplane. And it's irrational, and I don't care. So the first thing that had to happen was I had to get the confidence back in the airplane. I had to stop being angry at the airplane. And you know what did it? It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre. Somebody, it was that stress spike that really just kind of knocked me down in terms of the health, because I'd been looking forward to this thing as a source of relaxation and enjoyment and stress reduction. And day 2, I have a power failure, which is a lot of stress. And now, if you wanted to hear me the day or 2 after the actual event, I'm running around saying I used to have an airplane, now I'm storing, tens of $1,000s worth of fiberglass. I used to have a Long Easy, now I've got a Long Easy project. I'm not a happy camper. And somebody finally said to me that stress really got you to get back looking at your health again, get some more of those tests done, because I was really pretty stressed and I got pretty sick over this. And somebody managed to flip the switch on me. They basically said, yes, I am anthropomorphizing a great deal, M2 Foster, and I'm proud of it. And anybody who's ever had a car that they loved, or a boat that they loved, or a gun that they loved, or an airplane, every airplane has got a personality. So basically somebody said, that airplane was actually trying to save your life, because that stress got you some more tests that you needed, and got you to calm down and get on and basically that airplane saved you and now it's time for you to save it. It doesn't want those PMags on there. It wants a good, reliable ignition system, and it's actually. And I thought, you know what? Sold. And that night, by weird coincidence, I was sulking in the house, and because I had nothing else to do. God knows I wasn't going to go flying. Scott asked if there's a warranty on the airplane. That's a sweet thing to say. It's experimental aviation. You take the risk. I didn't mean to laugh at you, Scott. I've had a couple people said, was there a warranty on the airplane? No, I bought the airplane as is. I assumed the risk involved. The previous owner has been a complete gentleman about this. He says we're going to solve this problem together. He's a wonderful, wonderful, good man. He's heartbroken. He was heartbroken because that's the one thing he feared. So, but no, this is I'm doing a trifecta on experimental aviation and how it'd be nice if we lived in experimental America. And this is the part of being an adult. You know, the plane was inspected. I did due diligence on it. I bought it. It's mine. It failed under my watch. It's my problem. But I was there the night after the incident. Like I said, the day of the event, late in the afternoon, was fine. Went home, wasn't upset, wasn't shaking. Fine, nothing to it. Piece of cake is what we do. So I got the next day was when I was really taking this kind of anxiety hit. Not anxiety about not shaking about the event, just like I bet the farm on this thing for recreation, and now it's just really bit me. So anyway, I'm at home watching TV, and I got nothing else to do, and I'm looking through Netflix or something, and I see a movie that I hadn't seen in forever, and has a big deal of significance for me. It's Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and it may sound hilarious, but Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is very close to me because, number one, I loved it when I was a kid, but number two, it was written by Ian Fleming, who wrote the James Bond novels, and it features a guy named Caractacus Potts, and my grandfather's name is Alfred Potts, and they used to call him Caractacus Potts. He used to do a thing called Crackpot. That was very funny. And my grandfather was a really bright guy and kind of an inventor, and we're quite convinced that character in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang was based on my grandfather. And so if you've ever seen Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, it's about a magical vehicle that protects you and takes care of you, and it goes Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Well, all right, that's what I'm going to name the airplane. I'm going to name my airplane Chitty Chitty Bang Bang now. You know, it's and it's, I know this is so strange. I really do. But it helps so much. It just helps so much. It's like, okay, so it's making a lot of noise. It's not the end of the world, man. You got an airplane that's got an engine that's making a lot of noise. We'll get that sorted out. And from then on, it was fine. I went off to Oshkosh, which I'm about to show you. So since then, I went back to the airplane, cleaned the bugs off the leading edge, and we sat and had another long talk, and we're all on the same page now. And it's cool. And I think, I don't have it. It's okay. I'm not going to worry about it unless it's right here. I loaded every single picture except for that last one. You know what? I'm going to get it. It's worth it. Just give me 1 second. I'm sorry. I always hate having to do this. I loaded a bunch of pictures, and they're all ready to go. There's one I didn't get. I want to get it. It's the last picture I took on my cell phone, and it's right here, and now it's there, and now I'm going to bring it into Ustream, and we'll be good to go. Goodbye. Okay. So I went in the hangar and had a talk with it and figured out what the problem was, and we're all on the same page, me and the airplane. It's totally cool. We're all good. Here's a picture I took in the hangar just a couple nights ago, and there she is. And she's a beautiful airplane. She wants to fly, and she wants to fly without the PMags, and she wants an electronic ignition system. She wants a much bigger canopy. There's a bunch of other things she wants that I'll be talking about in future episodes. But for now, you'll be pleased to know that everything's cool. Plane's ready to fly. I'm ready to fly. It's still a little sick, but we'll get her fixed, and she'll be happier and healthier and more reliable than she was before this happened. And again, if you're going to be anthropomorphizing about all this stuff, you might as well do it. If you're going to do it, you might as well do it right. You might as well come out of it. The way I'm looking at it now is that engine failure could happen when I was over the Rocky Mountains, could have happened out at sea, could have happened anywhere. The fact that it happened in gliding range of the home airport is my airplane's way of telling me it had something that needed to get fixed, and that was the way to get it fixed priority before I found myself hundreds of miles away from hangars, roads, repairs, or whatever. So plane took good care of me. That's the way I choose to look at it. And if you don't like it, you can go watch another TV show right now. So here's the Oshkosh trip, and we have a celebrity guest with us. Somebody asked in the comment section, does Bert watch this? He does. Bert Bert watches it. It's a mystery to me. It's amazing. So much of what you're going to see coming up is just me being just amazed and amazed at the turns my life has taken, and they're all wonderful turns. So I'm going to just move this out of the way, get a little better look at it. And so now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we'll just do a little bit of the Oshkosh trip, and then we'll move on and start talking about things other than aviation. Somebody said it looks like a drone. It does look like a drone. They make, China and Pakistan, I want to say at least two of them, basically make the Long Easy and turn them into drones. It's an incredibly valuable, incredibly efficient, wonderful airframe, and it goes like the dickens on very little power. All right, here's our pictures, kind of in the order in which they came up. This is at Coeur d'Alene Airport, and the expression you see there is not revulsion. That's a kind of a grrr, because she's a bad, 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 bad baby. That is the Starship. That's Bert Rutan's corporate jet, basically. It's a twin pusher prop, twin turbofan pushers, and she looks mean and fast, because she is mean and fast, and got some good pictures of her coming up. This is something I put on the Facebook page, and I don't think I'll ever get tired of this either. This is climbing out of Coeur d'Alene. Yep, sorry about the red light, just to make sure you guys can see. Climbing out of Coeur d'Alene, I'm in the right seat. The owner, Robert Shearer, I'll talk about in a minute, is in the left. And coming out of clouds like this is just not something that I ever get tired of. I'll never get tired of that. We're doing probably 200 knots still on the climb. Look at that. I mean, that's why we do it. That's why we do it, right there. It's the most unbelievable feeling on the face of the earth. It's absolutely spectacular. The videos will just keep moving. This is hard to see. It's the view at 36,000 feet from Oshkosh, Wisconsin, 1,200 nautical miles from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho to Oshkosh, Wisconsin. That little plume up there is an A380. It's the largest jetliner in the world. It's just marginally bigger than... Is Bert here? Somebody said, hey, Bert, come on. I have to stop over that one. Anyway, if he's not here, he'll watch it eventually. So that little feather you see there is an A380. And we passed about 1,000 feet almost directly under that. I videotaped it, but the video camera was focusing on the inside of the glass, and it just didn't look very good. But it's amazing when you live up there. Absolutely amazing when you live up there and you see these things. So the flight to Oshkosh was fantastic. We rolled in on Airshow Center. I'm in right seat. We're checking for traffic. I feel like I'm pulling my weight here. We actually have two pilots. Oh, we have a pilot and a monkey with a pilot's rating. But I was in the right seat, had an absolute blast. And I can prove to you that they can even train a chimp how to, well, if not fly, at least how to not screw up the flying. Because this is taken as a selfie. We're at 36,000 feet, somewhere over North Dakota. Where's the pilot? He's gone in the back. They're letting the chimp up front and hoping he doesn't hit anything. Yeah, that's actual footage from an actual airplane, which is actually being flown by that. Now, by the way, I wish I could pause it. In fact, I'm going to let it go around again. The panel on the Starship was the first commercial airplane to have a completely glass cockpit, no steam gauges, no analog mechanical gauges. And it's kind of a retro look now. I can't stop the video, I wish I could. But look at the panel, because the panel on the Starship looks like Battlezone. It's like one of those great vector computer games, and it's colorful, and I think it's the coolest panel in aviation. I think it's fantastic. Absolutely incredible. But anyway, that is the Starship interior, and we're flying on our way to Oshkosh. We landed at Oshkosh. I've got some of that footage coming up in the trifecta I'm doing, which may come tomorrow or the next day. But when you get to Oshkosh, and you're in the company of this guy, going to Oshkosh with Bert Rutan is kind of like walking through Vatican City with the Pope. You just get... everything happens. And if there's a man who's made it happen, if there's one man responsible for the people there, one individual, it's Bert Rutan. It's not to say that just Bert is the only guy. There's thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who are part of it. But Bert Rutan brought fighter pilots to common people like me. Right, James? Right, James Redman? Burt Rutan allowed a regular guy to have his own little fighter airplane, and that's what he did. And that's why he's so loved. People worship him. They just cluster around him. They want to touch him. He's like Elvis. He's got the best chops too. I mean, he looks like Elvis. He's the king, man. He's the king, and the king is reigning in Oshkosh, and I was there, and I got to be a part of it. This is a great shot of the Starship. It's a great angle, and in order to get that shot, the pilot owner, Bob Shearer, actually lay down on the ground and took that shot. He had it also. He said, all right, stand next to the canard. Now look up in the sky like you're looking at something, and I did. And that's one of the best pictures of me ever taken. I love that shot. It's the biggest long easy I've ever seen. That's a big long easy. And I'll talk about Bob in a second here, but I'm just absolutely in love with that picture. I think it's just great, and I'm happy about the shirt I'm wearing too. It's a good shirt to wear to Oshkosh. So of all the miracles in my life, they just keep on coming. I sat there and I got to meet and got to be friends with Bert's brother, Dick, I just don't know what to say. I mean, Dick is an aviation legend. Dick flew Voyager around the world nonstop, unrefueled. It took him 9 days, 3 hours, and 44 minutes, if I remember correctly. He's 300 missions in Vietnam, F-100 pilot. The F-100 is my favorite airplane. Had to eject 3 times, shot down over Vietnam, or bailed out over Vietnam at least. And, he's a friend of mine. Now, I don't know if I really should do this. I'm going to do it. You know what? We may just have to save the questions. But we'll get some questions. I'm just going to do this. Give me a second here. I think Bert said he was going to put on his website, so it's not like it's history. Let me just tell you a quick little story here, and you just have to give me a second to find this email. Let me tell you the story if I can type and talk at the same time. I was up at Bert's on the 4th of July, and I had a great time up there on the 4th of July. But I have to find. Give me 1 second. I'm sorry. I can't walk and chew gum at the same time. I got to get this email, and then. Golly, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna have to wait. I know it's awful dead air, but it's worth it. Believe me. I've got to find this letter I wrote for Bert when I was up there. Oh, for God's sakes, Billy. Hang on, I know there's nothing worse than dead air, but I think you'll think it's worth it if you give me just one more second here, because this is the intersection of an aviation legend and somebody who's not an aviation legend. Yeah, he's not there either. Golly gosh, where is this thing? I wish I could just pause this. It's driving me crazy. It's worth it. Give me a second here. I'm so sorry. I know this is just terrible TV. Gosh. It's got to be right around 4th of July, 5th of July. Oh, man. This is just not happening. It's here. It's here. I'm just going to have to take my word for it. I did not think I would do this, and I still have some thoughts about whether I should or not, but maybe this is it. Come on, baby. No. All right, I'm going to give another second. If that doesn't work, I'm just going to give it up. Well, damn it. All right. I just can't do this all day. I just wish I had it. Here's the short form, okay? I'll just come back to me for a second. Sorry about all that delay. Dick was thinking about moving to Oregon, and I was sitting up at Bert's on the 4th of July, and I said, Dick can't move to Oregon. Somebody's going to get killed. He's going to snap if he's surrounded by all these hippies. He shouldn't move to Oregon. And Bert calls out from the next room. He said, well, I wish you'd write him and tell him that. So I wrote Dick a letter. Now, I'd flown with Dick Rutan one time 12 years earlier. He didn't know who I was. And I wrote a letter explaining why he should not move to Oregon. And it's the funniest thing I've ever written. And because it's the funniest thing I've ever written, I think it's the funniest thing I've ever written, I'm going to find it. I'm gonna find it. So wherever it is, I'm gonna find it. Hang on a minute. I know we may have sent it to this guy. He may be here. Come on, buddy, you can do it. Hang on. Good sign. Here it is. Okay, I'm going to read it to you. This is the letter, this is the letter that I wrote to Dick Rutan, who I've never met in my life. Now, this is the worst produced show on the internet, but this isn't fair because this wasn't something I was thinking I would do, just kind of meandered that way. And I've got a lot more pictures to come back to. So just to set the stage, Dick is thinking about moving to Oregon. I hear he's thinking about moving to Oregon. Bert doesn't want him to move to Oregon. I sure don't want him to move to Oregon. The man is the definitive steely-eyed missile man, okay? This is the guy. This is the fighter pilot hero kind of guy. He's the greatest guy in the world, and he's formidable. And I don't think he should move to Oregon. So I wrote him this letter. He doesn't know who I am. Apparently he's seen some of my videos, but it's not like we were friends or anything. I'm going to read it to you, and I'm going to have to be careful to censor myself because there's probably 2 places where it's not safe for work. But anyway, here's a letter I wrote to Dick Rutan telling him not to move to Oregon. Dear Dick, even though we've only met once, I flew with you in the back of your long, easy, snapping turn point pictures when you're doing a visual reference flight for X-Corps. I'm going to presume to write to you here in the interest of humanity. Yesterday, I went water skiing in Lake Coeur d'Alene, the most lovely, large body of easily defensible fresh water I've ever seen. Bert tells me that you're thinking about retiring to Oregon, and I'm writing to tell you that if you decide to do that, people are going to die. Dick, those patchouli-smelling Oregon hippies plan to have cameras in your house to make sure that you're in full compliance with their laws to mandate that you wear a safety helmet in the shower and that you use OSHA standard ear and eye protection when you use the Lazy Susan on your dinner table. Why in the name of God would a steely-eyed missile man like yourself subject yourself to such indignities? Have you no regard for your historical legacy, man? Potatoes are not the only quality items to be planted in Idaho. I plan to be planted there myself. I was born in America, and like you, I've done my best to defend her and hope to retire and be buried someplace in America, which means someplace like Idaho and not some godless communist weenie farm where they would lay braided hemp over your record-setting body and then leave you out for the benefit of spotted owls and delta smelts. Move to Idaho and someday go out like the man that you are. When my day comes, I hope to be cremated and have the ashes mixed into a graphite core encasing a small nuclear device to be detonated in the event of a Chelsea Clinton or Michelle Obama presidency, just to show these commie sons of bitches that we are not messing around, or at a few hundred feet above the lethal blast radius over Lake Coeur d'Alene on the 4th of July following my tragic and untimely demise. Yes, right, I want to go out with a nuclear weapon attached. I want to be part of a nuclear weapon dedicated on the 4th of July. Dick, this is what men are supposed to do with their lives, not spending their golden years crocheting organic safety vests for Oregon firearm disposal squads. I said if you move to Oregon that people are going to die. I don't know you, Dick, but I know a lot about you. And if you wake up surrounded by hippies, lesbians, commies, and eco-weenies, then it's only a matter of time before you snap and take half the town with you. Now, while I don't have any problem with that per se, it would mean the loss of the best commanding general that the Republic of Northern Idaho Air Force is likely to see, and I personally would not like to serve under a lesser man if I can help it. Best regards, and look forward to meeting you again someday. P.S. Please move to Sandpoint or somewhere like that, since 2 Rutans in one town would set up an ego-neutronic alternating phase probability shift that will cut a rift in the space-time continuum and likely destroy the universe. Let's save that for a last resort, shall we? Hope that was worth it. I think it's one of the most fun things I ever wrote. I had so much fun with it. So anyway, that's the letter I sent to Dick Rutan, and Bert thought he'd reply within 10 minutes. We didn't hear from him for 3 days. I finally sent Bert an email and said, I think I broke your brother. I think I might have broke Dick Rutan. I don't know if it changed his mind. I have not heard any more about the plans to move to Idaho with this steely-eyed missile man. I like to think that I might have saved thousands of lives, innocent lives. But whatever it was, it apparently made an impression. So got more about Dick coming up in a second. So that was the first day. I arrived, shook his hand, and there he was. And man alive, I just couldn't believe it. It's like I'm surrounded by these legends and so on. So the next day was Bert Rutan Day. Tuesday was Bert Rutan Day. The highlight of the day was what was called the Rutan Legacy Flight. And this is a crowd you can just barely see. Maybe you can't. There's a Gilligan's Island hat just underneath the nacelle. That's Bert. Bert talking about his vehicles. And so people were crowding around on that day, and then what happened was the Starship went up over Oshkosh, and then we flew in the Starship, and then one of each of Bert's designs, he's done 46 that have flown, he's done 370 or something total designs, but 40 plus have flown. But we had 6, I think. We had the Starship, which was the biggest one in the front, and behind that was the Boomerang, and we had the Catbird, we had the Defiant, we had a Long Easy, we had a couple of Very Easies, I want to say, and we all flew overhead. Now, just come back to me for a second because I got to tell you a cool little part of this story. So there's the Starship. I'd flown in the right seat in on the approach the day before, and the day of the show, I was hoping to be in the right seat again because there's a lot of airplanes over Oshkosh during AirVenture, lots of airplanes all the time up there. Lots and lots and lots, and the Starship is making right turns. The actual pilot, Robert's in the left seat. But when you're in a narrow cockpit and you make a right turn, you can't see anything out the right. All you can see is the ground. You can't see what's out there. You can't see the airport, can't see any other airplanes. So we were trying to make the case that I should get to ride in the front seat as a safety pilot on the right side. And I'm just telling you the story so you can hear witness the awesome firepower of a fully armed and operational Burt Rutan. Robert went in to make the case for me to be on board, and the FAA said, nope. Nobody up in the sky that doesn't need to be there, and you can fly the airplane by yourself, so no. And I said, well, that's the way it goes. And we told Bert, and Bert said, no. He just storms. He didn't storm. He walked right in there. They're like the air bosses in a meeting, you know. They're getting ready to do the show. Everybody's like getting real. It's like, Mr. Rutan would like to see you. Yes, sir. What can we do for you? And Bert says, I'm sorry. I think it's a real safety issue. I'm genuinely concerned about the safety of the aircraft and the safety of the spectators. He's going to be up there making right turns. The sky's filled with airplanes. You need somebody in the right seat to. And by this point, once they figure out what it is he's talking about, the FAA, the air boss or the junior air boss or something, mini boss says, taken care of. Yes, sir. It's all taken care of. Do I need to talk to you? No, that's taken care of. We'll get Bill's information right now, and we'll have him in the right seat, and everything will be just fine, like that. That's what happens when you travel with the Pope. It wasn't a case. I really want to stress this is important to me. This is not a case of me pulling strings for personal pleasure, although it certainly was that. It wasn't just that. There's a pretty compelling case to be made for having somebody who can see in the direction that these aircraft are turning, considering there's 7 of us in a big circle and we don't want to run over our own tails and all the rest of that stuff. So anyway, to my utter amazement, we went from this 20 minutes later. They cleared everybody out of the way, and yours truly, is walking the wing of a by God Beach Starship pushing out to the taxiway at Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And I'm part of the flight crew. I'm part of the show. It blew my mind. We went around the pattern twice. F-22s came in while we were on the taxi. Bert did the voice narration, and we're lead in a group of all these different wild, incredible designs of his, and it was just magical. I mean, it's as good as it gets for me. It's just as good as it gets. I mean, I'm in Bert Rutan's beautiful Starship, owned by a guy who I admire enormously. Let's talk about him for a second. Robert Shearer is the owner of this particular Starship, but he's much more than that. Robert is the savior of the Starship. There's a long story here, and I could do an hour on this story. I'm just give you the super quick thumbnail. Beech built the Starship off of Bert's designs. Bert and Skilled Composites designed it. Beech didn't know what to do with it. It was the first fully carbon fiber airplane ever certified by the FAA. They added 3,000 pounds of weight that didn't need to be there because they just didn't know how to handle it. But when Beech realized that this airplane was so dramatic and fast, they didn't know how to sell it, didn't really know what to do with it, but it's an amazing airplane. To my utter, in fact, let's just come back to me for a second, because I think you really need to see the face of genuine shock and despair here. Beech built about almost 50, maybe 51 of these beautiful, magnificent airplanes, and they destroyed 45 of them for liability purposes. They cut him up. They went at him with a backhoe. Because the plane was competing with their King Air, they were marketing against themselves. And when they decided to take him out of circulation, their lawyers said, well, we don't want the liability, so let's destroy him. They didn't even send him to a museum, for God's sakes. There's thousands of aviation museums around the world. They could have at least put him in a museum. But no, they destroyed them. For the lawyers made them destroy 45, 46 of these Starships, tear them up with backhoes, because Beech didn't know what to do with them. And Robert Shearer owns one. He owned one at the time, and he loved his airplane, and no one's going to take it. If you're going to cut up Robert Shearer's Beech Starship, you better come armed if you're going to do that. So Robert not only saved his airplane, there I think are 6 in the world, 5 in America, 1 in Germany, I want to say. But not only did he save his airplane, but he basically made an offer on the parts for the other 45 and bought something like $25 million worth of Starship parts for about, $250,000. And now, because of Robert Shearer, there are enough spare parts to keep these Starships flying for about 200 years. He's got backup parts for every component on his airplane and backup parts for every component on the 5 other remaining Starships. And because of Robert Shearer and his dedication and his risk and all this other stuff, he basically saved the fleet. And I'm flying with this guy. Are you kidding me? He's one of the best people I ever met. That's Robert right after we shut down after doing the Legacy flight. This is me as we're just about to shut down. We're taxiing past the people, the adoring millions out there. That's about as happy as this boy gets, honestly. So that's about as good as it gets for Billy. Once we got back to Show Center, because we go to Show Center, we had a bunch of canards, and we got out of the airplane. I shook Robert's hand almost like I was a real pilot, and all the other guys were coming out of their aircraft. We just done this giant flyover, and we went out there and shook everybody else's hand, and then we pushed them out of the way to get them into Show Center. And it's hard to see because there's just so many canards and winglets here, but on the left is the Boomerang, which is a twin-engine airplane. It's Bert's favorite design. If you ever know anything about flying, if you fly a twin-engine reciprocating aircraft and you lose an engine at a critical moment, the joke is that the other engine is there to fly you to the scene of the crash. But on the Boomerang, it's an asymmetrical airplane. It's hard to see. It's in the upper left. It's in the left-hand corner there. But there's an engine in front of the main compartment, and then off to the side is a pod with its own engine in it. And I don't even think they're the same size engines. I want to say one's a 360 and one's a 320. I'm not sure about that. But basically, this airplane is so aerodynamically perfect that if you lose an engine in the Boomerang, you can turn and climb with 1 or 2 degrees of aileron and both your feet on the floor. You don't have to be cranking the other rudder. It's the safest design ever. It's 240 knots. It's 300 miles an hour virtually. And there should be 10,000 Boomerangs flying right now because they're safe and they're fast. But they're not, because I don't know why, because that's just one of those things that I just can't explain. I want to say it was that night. I really lost track of time. I think it was that night. Yes, it was that night. That's David Hartman on the left. You may remember him from Good Morning America. Time has passed since then. That's Bert Rutan, Dick Rutan, and Mike Melville. And for 2.5 hours, they just talked about flight tests. They talked about everything. Talked about the Spaceship One program. Talked about getting started. Talked about everything. Mike Melville you're going to hear that name, Mike Melville, on Friday, because I'm doing an afterburner called The Wright Brothers, R-I-G-H-T. And they're not actually 2 brothers, they're triplets. In the same way that Orville Wilbur and Charlie Taylor were triplets. Who's Charlie Taylor? Well, you're going to get a chance to find out. But these guys were telling aviation stories for 2.5 hours, and the final hour was the most compelling hour I've ever sat and listened through live, because the final hour was about the Voyager flight. Dick said a lot of things that he never said before. Just prior to this, Dick was telling the story of him doing an endurance flight in Long Easy. And it was something like 50-hour flight or something. He was 35 hours, something into this. Just staying awake, just toughing it out, because he's guts, this kid. He's just an amazing, amazing man. And Dick was telling the story during this panel of what it was like to be flying and be that exhausted. And it was middle of the night, and Dick was flying along, and he looked out over the canard, and sitting on the canard of his long easy, he saw a little black elf, about that big, little black elf, and not an African American elf, sharp features, sharp teeth, ebony black skin, jet black skin. He said that this elf was sitting on his canard, and the elf started pulling pieces of the canard off and throwing them overboard. And he says, I'm going to destroy this airplane, Dick, and I'm going to kill you, and there's nothing you can do about it. What do you think about that? It's fascinating to me that this is the exact same dynamic that has been seen by pilots, exhausted pilots, since people started flying airplanes. The Russian pilots in World War II were flying so many missions, they saw gremlins. That's where the word comes from. On the wing, tearing pieces of the plane off, throwing it overboard. Every flying culture, every airman who's stressed and exhausted sees little men on the wing pulling off pieces of the airplane and throwing it overboard and talking to them. So Dick is talking about seeing this little black elf on his, like in the Twilight Zone, exactly, Sarge. That's where it comes from. Both the William Shatner version and the John Lithgow movie version. There's a creature on the wing, and it's going to destroy the airplane. And I'm on the airplane, which means I'm going to die. Dick is telling about seeing this little guy just out of reach, just right there, pulling pieces of the airplane off and saying, turning to him and saying, Dick, it's not a question that you're going to die. You've already died. You're dead. That's why you see me. You're dead. Here's what happened. And then Dick said he described the crash. The little elf described the crash of the Long Easy in meticulous detail. In meticulous detail. He described the crash, and then Dick said to a room full of silence, a packed room full of silence, he said, and the little elf turned to him, looked up at him and said, and in fact, Dick, you're already dead, so why don't you just relax, close your eyes, and come with me. Wow. So back to this evening. So there's a Dick telling the story, and then he starts talking about the Voyager flight. And Dick flew that airplane for 9 days. Gina Yeager was with him on the plane, but she never actually took the control. She monitored the autopilot, and Dick slept maybe, a day or two of the 9 days. Maybe probably not even that much, probably 6 hours total. Dick said he was on the plane. He was so exhausted that the cockpit, the panel, the instrument panel was bulging out towards his face, and he had to call Gina and help him push the panel back because it was going to crush him against the back of the airplane. If you've ever seen the inside of the Voyager, it is genuinely, truly the size of a phone booth in there. And when they built the Voyager, it's a flying fuel tank, and there's no margin for error. Most airplanes, even Cessnas, are certified to at least a 2.3, 2.5 G turn, 2.5 G load, 2.5 times the normal weight. The Voyager was stressed to 1.2 Gs, 1.4 Gs. Any kind of turbulence, any kind of real stress, the plane comes apart. Now, they'd flown the Voyager prior to this for a couple years, but they'd only flown it at 80% weight. And the more fuel they put on board the Voyager, the more unstable it became. It was never a particularly good airplane to fly anyway. It had one mission, and that's fly around the world without stopping or refueling. But Dick said as the plane got closer to 80% weight, when you would start to, I can come back to me again for a second, just so I can show you this. I should have had a picture of Voyager. I just concentrated on my pictures. The Voyager had two long booms, very long wings, pilots in the center with an engine on the front and the back. The front engine was only used to climb, then they shut it off to save fuel. And it's very long, very slender, very heavy, filled with tanks, and basically, when the plane would hit turbulence, it would start to oscillate. The wings would kind of flap like that. They'd go up and down like that. Now, at less than 80% fuel weight, over time the flapping would slowly dampen itself out. That's good. All certified airplane dampen out these kind of things, otherwise they can't be certified. But when it got to be about 80% weight or so, it started to do the opposite. Once if it hit a little bit of turbulence, the wings would bounce, and every time the bounce would get bigger, it would be divergent. It would depart from controlled flight and essentially just break itself to pieces. So, at full weight, Dick was convinced that the plane would shake itself to pieces on takeoff. He's seen the wings, and he knew Dick Rutan has the velvet arm. That's what he calls it, and he's earned it. And so, in order to make Voyager fly, even at 80% weight, Dick is constantly having to do the opposite of what this oscillation is doing to dampen it out. He's the damper. But they knew that as they weighted up more and more and more, it was getting worse and worse and worse. And to be short form is sitting there on the panel that night, Dick said, I thought the chance of me getting killed in that airplane was excellent. He didn't think he was going to come back. Didn't think he was going to make it. And he said, I was pretty sure I was going to die that morning, and I wanted to leave. I just wanted to chuck it and walk away, but I couldn't because we had volunteers who'd given their years of their lives and lost their jobs working on that airplane. We'd taken hundreds of dollars of small donations. If it had been one rich guy, I would have just turned around and walked away. I said, I'm sorry, I wanted to do it. It's not safe. I'm not going to die for this. But hundreds of people, maybe thousands, had given small amounts of money. He felt he owed it to them. The world's press was there. He felt it owed it to them, and he felt he owed it to America. So he got in this airplane, and the canopy on the Voyager is so small, it's just a little blister, really. It's just enough to get your head above the fuselage so you can see a little bit of where you're going. And he was telling later, in a different thing, how when he strapped that airplane on that day, he couldn't get the canopy to close. It's just a little bubble. It's just a little thing, but it's removable. And it's because they put so much fuel in the Voyager for this one full fuel flight that the hull had deformed so that the canopy wouldn't lock down. And Dick was saying, thank God, now I've got an excuse to not get killed today. The canopy won't lock. It's not my fault. I wanted to fly. Can't fly if the canopy won't lock. But because Dick Rutan is one of the bravest men that ever lived on this earth, he decided that wasn't going to cut the mustard. He would know if nobody else knew. So he managed to get the canopy secured, and off they went. The runway at Edwards Air Force Base is 15,000 feet, and Voyager used 14,600 feet of that 15,000 feet. It was a 2-minute, 11-second takeoff roll. Just creeping along, and Dick had the stick full forward, putting the wingtips in the ground because Dick was convinced that at that weight, if he didn't keep the wings all the way down, keep the nose down until he had enough speed to fly, then the wings would start this flapping, and on the ground they would flap into the ground, and that would be the fireball, and that would be the end of Dick and Gina Yeager. So he kept it on the ground. At the last minute, he pulled up, and the wings just flex up, and it just cranks off into the sky, and it's an amazing thing. Bert was saying, Dick was saying, Mike was in the chase plane. Mike was a big part of this whole thing. And Bert was saying, I want to get these numbers right. I want to say it was 64 knots. It might have been 84, but I'm pretty sure it was 64. At halfway mark, that's 7,000 feet of runway. They needed 64 knots. If they weren't at 68 knots, sorry. They needed to be at 68 knots halfway down the runway, and if they didn't get it, they were not going to get it because they were not accelerating quickly enough. They would run out of runway, and they'd go off into the desert and turn into a fireball, and that'd be the end of Dick and Gina. So at halfway, Bert had said to Dick privately, he said, if we're going to take a blood oath now, we're going to cut our palms and do a blood oath. If you don't have 68 knots at halfway, you have to abort this flight. You have to abort it. Dick said, okay, works for me. So they're going down the runway, and they're halfway down the runway at the halfway mark, and they've got 64 knots, not 68. They're 4 knots slow. And Dick said something actually got me out of my chair. It was one of those moments like in Raiders of the Lost Ark. You know, Dick said something in this quiet room. Everybody's silent, and he's telling this story. And Dick said something that got me out of the chair the way I got out of the chair when Indiana Jones shot the guy with a sword in Raiders of the Lost Ark. I didn't think about it. It's like a conditioned response, like somebody hit me in the knee with a mallet. Dick said, after 5 years of work, I was tired. I was tired of the test flying. I was tired of the raising money. I was tired of the co-pilot. I was tired of everything. I just wanted to get it over with. And he said, when we released the toe brakes on that little toe brake on that airplane, when he released the toe brakes that day on Voyager was either going to fly around the world or they're going to die in a fireball, but it was going to be one of those two things. They weren't going to stop. I just got out of my chair over that. It's like, this to me, this is what America's all about. That's what courage is. And so, anyway, so he tells this whole story, and it was just riveting. And the best part of it is that Bert and Mike are flying them, watching him disappear over the Pacific. They fly him way out to sea, turns around to come home, doesn't think good chance he'll never see his brother again. And he came back, and he realized Bert and Mike in the little Duchess that they were in, they realized, my God, we're out in the middle of nowhere. He couldn't see California, never been that far out to sea before. And he just realized Dick's going the other way. He and Gina are going around the world. So that was spectacular. But the best part of the whole evening was when Bert was saying a plane was coming back from the southeast, coming up from Mexico. And it was still very early. In fact, it was dark. And Mike and Bert went up to look for Voyager inbound after 9 days, total of 9 days, 3 hours and 44 minutes. And he said they were flying in the heading where they expected to see it, and it's still nighttime. and he saw a strobe light off in the distance, just a blinking strobe, and he thought, oh my God, there they are. He thinks it's them. So he gets on the radio and he tells Dick, he says, we got a strobe in sight, Dick. Could you turn off your strobe? We'll make sure it's you. And all of a sudden that little blinking spark went out, and he knew they made it. He knew his brother had come back, and they'd done it. And they turned the strobe back on, and Bert was crying, and Mike was crying, and Dick, after flying for 9 days with no sleep, essentially, not only got that airplane home, but he did 2 beauty passes. I think he took like 45 minutes after he got to the airport to get the thing to land. Oh my God, what a bunch of heroes, all 3 of these guys. Mike Melville flew into Spaceship One into space twice with major malfunctions in 2004. Mike is Bert's best friend. He's turning a lathe in Indiana. He comes out there to ask Bert some questions and never leaves. Mike Melville, who doesn't get nearly enough credit, is one of the most superb pilots in the history of the world. Mike took off on one mission. He's going straight up. He's got a rocket burning beneath him, and all of his instrumentation goes out. Once again, automatic abort if you lost the instrumentation, but he knew they needed that information. They had the record flight coming up. These flights cost hundreds of thousands of dollars each. He looks out the window. He says, you know what? I can see where I am. I can tell I'm not rolling. I can get my genuine approximate pitch attitude. Let's keep going. He rode that baby into, by God, outer space with no instrumentation and tiny little windows. And on the second to last flight, he's climbing up there, and the thing goes into an uncontrolled roll. It's just rolling. Anybody else would have cut the engine and gotten this thing under control. Mike decided to get it under control and keep the engine going. He had an X Prize to win. The guy's made out of guts and skill. And he is the most humble man I've ever met in my life. Anyway, it was an amazing evening, and we're going to have to move on. I think it was the next day. We have a celebrity in the audience, and the celebrity in the audience is the builder of that aircraft. I've posted a couple pictures of it. That's Race 13. It's a Bearcoot. It's a super long easy, and it's made by James Redman, who is a regular Stratolounger, who you see him all the time. There are much better pictures of his airplane. I've posted a few of them, but that's the nicest airplane I've ever seen in my life. It's the nicest airplane I've ever seen. It looks like it's made out of one piece of cut crystal. There's no seams on it. There's no gaps on it. James should have won Best in Show just for his gust locks, just the little control locks that most people use, either like potato chip clips. He's got these little things with a little remove before flight thing, and it's got a little push indent. It's just his control locks are works of art. Works of art. So I took Robert Shearer, the Starship pilot, over to see what Robert agreed was the nicest airplane he'd ever seen. And then after hanging out at James's Bearcoot, we went back to the Starship, and then we got to return a favor. And there's my friend James Redman and the left seat of the Starship, which he's very fond of. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I met James for the first time about a couple months ago in Dallas with Scott Ott. I was out there for an event, but I feel like I've known him for 20 years. James Redman started building Bearcoot 13, and he put it online, and I was stone cold broke. I had my fingers through the fence of aviation, just staring at it, and I watched him build that airplane of his over 20 years on and off, really, when you get it all said and done. I remember when he first got the gear retraction video up. He was considerably younger then, and I watched the gear come up on that Bearcoot. I said, man, I gotta have one of these one day. And he is extraordinary craftsman and a superb pilot. He's got the fastest Bearcoot in the world, and he's upset because he knows he could make it faster and better. That's the mark of a professional and a guy who loves and understands aviation. And if he were in California right now, my plane would be flying, and would have been flying 10 days ago. So that was an amazing night. I'll tell you what, it was another amazing night. I want to say it was that night I got invited to speak to a bunch of Civil Air Patrol guys with Dick. Dick frickin' Rutan asked me if I wanted to go with him to one of these things, and I said, yeah, I'll find a way to clear my schedule, Dick. And there's 150, 170 cadets, the best Civil Air Patrol cadets from around the country there at Oshkosh, and the best kids you ever want to meet. And Dick had some great things to say. I had a couple of things to say, and because I'm just an incorrigible smartass, I was there, and Dick said some stuff, I said some stuff, and then Dick said, do any of you have any questions? And I shouted out to these kids, I said, make them tell you the story of the Black Elf. So Dick repeated the story about the Black Elf that had, was pulling pieces off his airplane and told him he already died. And sure enough, for the second time, the room is in absolute silence. He's just got them absolutely captivated because it's a horrifying, amazing story. And he says, anyway, well, thank you very much. And he walks off. And just as he's walking off, I scream. I'm such a jerk. So Dick walks off, and these kids are just, mesmerized. And I said, I can beat that story. I can top that story. So I stand up, and I'm looking at these 16, 17-year-old kids out there, and I said, okay, so this one time at band camp, I was coming back from San Diego in my Camaro, and I hadn't slept for, 4 or 5 hours. It's been 4 or 5 hours since I got any sleep, so I was pretty tired. There was no Starbucks, so it was an emergency situation. I'm driving my Camaro back on I-5, and I'm so tired. I look out, and I see this little black elf on the hood of my Camaro, and he's pulling bolts off of my front wheel, and he's throwing them away and saying, Bill, you're already dead. You're already dead. Just go to sleep and come with me. But then I remembered what Dick Rutan said about that black elf, so I just hit the brakes, and that little son of a bitch went flying 400 yards right straight through the air, and I put her in low and hit the gas and just turned him into a grease spot. I just went over and ran over him like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times, backed up over him, and then I continued on to Sherman Oaks, and I arrived uneventfully. And the crowd went crazy. And it was the most fun I'd had until the next day. And I'm going to have to pick up the pace. Somewhere in here, I want to say the next day, there were a couple things that, being a friend of Bert, he told me about. The Ski Gull, his seaplane, he got to talk about that. I've been sitting on those pictures for a while. And Bert has thought of a way to get 50% more payload into orbit on a rocket launch, which, as he says, people will kill their grandmothers to get 5% more. And he was talking about his dynamic launch thing, but he started off by talking about the history of the space program. He said in the 1960s there were 9 manned launch systems created, 9 different manned launch systems created from the first flight of Gagarin in 1961 to 1971. Can you name them? And I was able to get 8 of the 9. Nobody got the 9th one. So he's out there asking these questions. He said, what did that prove? What did that prove? That we did 7, that the United States of America developed 7 new manned launch systems in 10 years. What did that prove? And we talked about it in advance. Nobody got it. He said, well, I'm going to bring Bill Whittle up here. And I said, that proves American exceptionalism, Bert. Is what it proves. It's a combination of brains, guts, and hard work. And some countries have smart guys, and some countries have brave guys, and some countries have hard-working guys. But we have all 3. And when you put brains, guts, and hard work together, you have exceptional people, and you can do exceptional things. And parenthetically, just before Bert was speaking, the FAA administrator was there. And he's a little bureaucrat, and he's sitting on his bench, and somebody asked him, why is it that the FAA is terrorizing pilots, and why is it that people who have a medical problem have to wait 9 months before they even get an answer, let alone get it resolved? And why aren't you friendlier to aviation? And the FAA administrator sat there with this very smug look on his face, and he said, well, that's not true. Because if we didn't love aviation, there's a lot of things we wouldn't have let you do. We made 1,000 exemptions in this case where we allowed you to do this, and we allowed you to do this, and we didn't have to allow you to do this, but we did. We allowed you to do this, and we allowed you to do that. And I sat there thinking, I don't work for you. You work for me. I don't work for you. You don't get to decide what I get to do. You're not the person who decides where, when, or how, or far, and what distance I can fly. That's not your job. That's not what this agency was about. The FAA was founded to promote aviation. You don't get to tell us where we can and cannot go. This is not a favor you give us. This is exactly how the guy treated it. It's like it's a favor. Here, I'll tell you what. You seem like a nice guy. I'm going to let you fly your airplane today. Who the hell are you, man? You're not elected. You're not. There's no provision for the FAA in the Constitution. There's no provision for the Department of Transportation in the Constitution. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? And I said that during the thing. I basically said pretty much that. And I said, the reason America is such an exceptional country is because up until very recently, the government worked for us and not the other way around. The government used to work for us and not the other way around. That's what's exceptional. We could go out and build things. We didn't have to ask permission. We just did them. And that's why we went to the moon in 6 years after, or 7 after Kennedy made the speech. And that's why we built 7 manned launch systems in a 10-year period. It was amazing. Anyway, we're going to wrap up this Oshkosh segment. A little bit later in the show, I got a chance to see an F-100 in the air. The F-100 Super Sabre is not doesn't have a storied history, but it's my favorite airplane. I think I like it better than the F-16, although just barely. difference between the F-16 and a Super Sabre is the F-16 is kind of like a, top of the line Porsche, nothing but smooth lines and great angles, and the Super Sabre is kind of like a Charger. It's like a Dodge Charger. So, it's just muscle. It's just a muscle car. And they were flying F-100s in the Thunderbirds when I saw them in 1965, and I had not seen one in the air for 50 years. I was just a little boy when I saw them last time, but I saw one then. And the afterburner on an F-100 is kind of a single-stage afterburner. It's either on or it's off, and it's like, man, it lets you know it's there. So that was a heck of a thing. And a bunch of other wonderful things happened. I had a great picnic with a local EAA chapter, and Bert sang karaoke, and he was backed up by a bunch of kids who were in their early 20s, and they were just amazing. And this is the final picture I took. That's the Starship at Fells Airport just outside of Spokane, and I Ubered over to Spokane, came home commercial, and that is the true story of Bill and Bert's excellent adventure. Bill and Bert's and Robert's and Dick's and Mike's and Tanya's and everybody else's. Absolutely amazing. So that's that. I don't really know whether I should do some questions. It almost feels like an insult to do them because I got carried away. I didn't think I'd go that long, but I did. You know what I will do? A lot of people go to trouble to rate these things, so I'll answer just a couple of them, but I'm going to probably have to end this thing in about half an hour or do a 2-hour show tonight. So let's just see what we can come up with. But a couple of them. This was not the most highly rated question, but it's pending. Binary Artisan, who apparently used to be known as Jonathan Kua, says, I feel sure that it will come up in the preamble phase. It does, though the preamble ran an hour and a half. But just in case, what was the result of the call sign poll? Or did we get overridden by a real one via ViperCheck? ViperCheck is checking in now. He's already made it clear to me that I'm going to pay a heavy price for my comments about the F-100 being a better looking airplane than the F-16 because he's a Viper driver. And he's more than that, as a matter of fact. As a matter of fact, yes, a couple of shows ago, I told you I was going to be getting along easy, and I'd always wanted a call sign, and unknown to most people who think that you get to pick your cool call sign name, your call sign is picked for you, and it's designed to give you a constant boot in the butt about you're not as good as you think you are. It's actually designed to remind you of your shortcomings. So I'd said I don't have a squadron, and Strata Loungers are really the only squadron I have. So let's take up a poll and figure out what we're gonna call me, because it's not fair for me to pick my own name. And instantly, our friend ViperCheck, who's a regular stalwart, all the time, cut in and said, basically, he didn't say belay that order because that's squiddy language. He said something like that. He said, I got it. I'll take care of it. Turns out that he is an actual fighter pilot, and I'm not going to be revealing any more about what he actually does, but let's just suffice it to say it's not just flying a jet around. He's a big man on campus, although it's a pretty small campus. You're going to get a lot of that because I'm going to get my butt handed to me in a couple weeks. He said he's pulled together a group of miscreants. He said he's going to pull 4 pilots together and figure out a name, and they'll tape it, then they'll send me the tape. And then he said, what didn't happen this weekend? Apparently you've got more fans out here than we thought. There's like 25 guys want to be part of this goat rodeo. So apparently they've already had the meeting of the miscreants, as he said, and picked a name. And you don't get an opportunity like this. So I'm going to be flying down there for one night on middle of August, down to Tampa. And I'm going to get off the plane. I'm going to be surrounded by actual fighter pilots, and they're going to give me, hopefully, hours and hours and hours of crap. Then they're going to tell me what my actual call sign is. And I'm not going to talk about this too much, because if I do, I'll get too emotional, and they won't give it to me. They'll just call me Crybaby. It's probably a pretty good one for me anyway. By the way, I submitted a list of potential names to ViperCheck, to save him time. Because, it's kind of a awkward thing. You have to go through a lot of trouble. I don't want to burden them or anything. So I just gave them a list of names that I thought might be appropriate, like, Starlance, Mockbuster, Ace Killer, Stud, things like that. Appropriate things. So undoubtedly it'll be something, Stud 6, something like that. But I'm going to go down there, and what I almost said and forgot to say was, I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Now, I know this sounds a little maudlin, but when I tell you I mean something sincerely, I mean this sincerely. I would rather have a call sign given to me by actual fighter pilots than win an Academy Award. I really would. I would rather have that happen than win an Academy Award. Because it's all about the company you keep, you know. This is an enormous honor, which will be diminished only by the quality of the people presenting it. So that's going to happen in the middle of August, and I'm really looking forward to that. Anyway, so that's the answer. Yes, Viper 6 has stepped in, and he's going to give me a sound thrashing. I certainly hope, and we might do some flying as well. And so that is something I am looking forward to. I'm going to be there with bells on. Although, if it turns out that the bells are a problem in the cramped canopy space, I can certainly leave the bells off. All right, here we go. Just do a couple, just to say we did. Welter Alameda had, I think, probably a top-rated question. How is it the nation mourns for a dead lion, but Planned Parenthood isn't all over the news for desecrating and selling dead baby parts? I only heard about the lion based on this question. I wasn't really on the news today. Florida hunter killed a lion. It was a lion that wasn't supposed to be killed. He was big game hunting in Africa. I think his name was Cecil. And this lion was kind of a well-known lion. And this guy shot and killed him, and now there's death threats against him and so on and so forth. And why do we feel this gigantic outrage over a lion when we don't feel it over humans that are being murdered and cut into pieces and sold for profit? Well, the reason is for the same reason that we despise the Nazis and we don't despise the communists. There's pictures. There's pictures. That's why. It's really that simple. This lion has a face, and it may not be a human face, but it's a face. It has a name. It's Cecil the lion. It's not just unnamed lion. It's Cecil the lion. There's video of Cecil the lion, and Cecil taking care of his females or his cubs or playing or tracking down. He's got a personality. He's got a name. He's got a face. The reason that we despise the Nazis appropriately is because the victims have faces. There's photographs of what happened in Auschwitz. There's photographs of people being rounded up out of the Warsaw ghettos. There's photographs of little children who are getting onto cattle cars. They're either going to die in the car or they're going to die when they get off on the other end. All the faces of these little kids that you see, they're all dead. They all died. Every one of these little kids is dead. They're people. They're persons. They're identities. They have individuality. We know who they are. And we don't feel that way about the communists, because if we did, there wouldn't be a single person in the world who would ever say, I'm a communist. If you saw the faces that the communists murdered, they murdered 100 million, 200 million people that make the Nazis look like pikers, but they didn't have pictures of them, so they don't count. When you're dealing with Planned Parenthood, they're not people because there's no photographs of them. Many cases they do have names, but probably the ones that are aborted don't have names. And so they're faceless, nameless. Stalin, the greatest murderer in history, Mao might give him a run for the money. But Stalin really said so many important things, and one of the most important things he said, he ought to know, by God, he's the greatest murderer in history. He said, one death is a tragedy, a million deaths is a statistic. And it's true. There's millions of babies that are cut up for parts. That's a statistic. One lion is a tragedy. He's got a face, he's got an identity. And frankly, my first answer was going to be that the lion means more to people than thousands of babies, for this reason. If you could take a photograph of one of these aborted children and show pictures of the life that it would have had, if you could show pictures of it as an infant, if you could show pictures, just one, you don't have to do it with all of them, just one. If you could show pictures of it as an infant, if you could show pictures of it as a 2-year-old girl, running to meet daddy and opening her arms up and getting hugged and swung around, if you could show pictures of her learning how to ride her bicycle, if you could show pictures of her going out to her first, date on prom night, you could show pictures of her graduating college and throwing her cap up in the air, and if you could show pictures of that person that didn't get to be that person, then all of a sudden this problem would be over. Those people would be in jail for murder. But that's how it works, right? We filter out what we don't want to know. We filter out what we don't want to see. We all do this. I do this to some degree. I'm a big animal lover, and one of the ways I like animals is in cheeseburgers. if I had to watch that happen, I'd probably never eat another cheeseburger again. It's hypocrisy. It's just what happens, what's done. I actually, just to clarify that point, I don't have any problem with eating farm-raised cows or pigs. Their entire lives have been there. They wouldn't be there otherwise. That's why they're there. But I do have an enormous problem with the methods that are used to kill these animals. It's just horrific. There's got to be a better way than that. And I don't have any problem with a cow that's been out in a pasture for its entire life. But I do have a problem with a cow that's never seen daylight. I don't know. Am I splitting hairs? Probably. We all find our own comfort zones, right? But I think that's it, Walter. Lion is named Cecil, and he has a face and a name, and he interacts with his family, and we know what he looked like, and now he's gone. All of these thousands and thousands of fetuses are just fetuses. They're just a number, and we have to personalize them, and this is what the left does so well, and it's what we can't figure out how to do if our lives depended on it. David Proctor says, a popular internet meme says, 6 years later you still have your guns, don't live in a FEMA camp, and we don't have Sharia law, so tell me how stupid that makes you feel. How would the leader of the Common Sense Resistance respond? I would put up a picture that would say, 6 years of trying to ban guns, 6 years of sympathy for those who want to cut off people's heads, and they've only been stopped through the hard work and efforts of dedicated patriots who are trying to stop this maniac, animal, terrorist, traitor. That's my response. They're trying to say, well, you're not in a FEMA camp. Look, the FEMA camps were never really on the table. The FEMA camps never really were going to happen. We're just going to have to settle for them knowing everything about us and monitoring all our phone calls and all the rest of it. And using weaponizing the IRS against us and having the government intimidate us and prosecute us and throw us in jail if you're a filmmaker. And if you happen to be a filmmaker named Dinesh D'Souza, not only do you get to go to jail and not only do you get to wear a bracelet, but you have to have 5 years of a re-education camp to deal with your dangerous psychology. There's obviously something pathologically wrong with you. You need mental health care treatment if you're going to criticize the light worker. That's how I would respond to this nonsense. Barack Obama's calling for gun control every chance he gets. He never misses a chance to call for gun control. The fact that he didn't get it is not a sign that Barack Obama didn't want it. It's a sign that he failed because he's incompetent. He's an incompetent man. He's a coward. He's a weakling, and he's not very smart. He didn't get it, not because he didn't get it because he didn't want to get it. He wants to get it every single day. Every single time there's a shooting, he's opening his mouth about gun control. So you don't get to say you didn't get the gun control. What about this unfounded fear of Obama? It's not unfounded. He's trying to do it all the time. We stood up to him. We happen to win that one. And as far as the no Sharia law, really? Tell that to some people in Dearborn. Tell it to people in neighborhoods where they're pushing for Sharia law. If you're saying he didn't command Sharia law from the outset, it's not because he doesn't want to do that either. He's certainly doing everything in his power to make sure that we have 2 sets of law in this country, or 4 or 12. You know, if you're a black protester, you have your own set of laws and you have your own Justice Department. If you're a Muslim, you have your own set of laws, and the Justice Department is backing you at the expense of the rest of the people in this country. So it's an absurd, ridiculous, pointless, childish, petty, stupid, dumb thing to say. The fact that he didn't succeed is not indication that he hasn't tried, and all the evidence indicates that he tried and is continuing to try. Next question. Zachariah Tiemens, who's got like virtually all these questions. You've talked about how thorium reactors will provide us with virtually free, virtually limitless clean energy for everyone. Isn't it more realistic and in line with human nature to expect that we will come up with infinitely more both essential and trivial uses for energy to offset its wider availability? If I understand this correctly, it's kind of the argument that says, hey, we're never going to use 100 kilobytes of RAM. It's just inconceivable that you need that much RAM. Well, once you have 100 kilobytes of RAM, then the demand increases, and now I've got 64 gigs, maybe 128 gigabytes of RAM. It's not enough. So if your question is, will the energy demand increase to match the energy supply, I hope so. Burning energy for trivial reasons is what civilization is all about. That's what makes life worth living, is the trivial burning of energy for non-essential purposes. And I can give you some good example of this. I have an airplane that is powered by 150 horses. My car has 306, I want to say. Do I need 306 horses of energy to take me where I need to go? I most certainly do not, but it's nice. And if I could get a car that had 600, I'd take it. The pointless burning of energy is what makes civilization worthwhile. And for those of you eco-weenies out there and you cognitively challenged types, well, have a car with 600 horsepower is ridiculous. Really? How many phones? I mean, how many songs do you have on your iPad or your iPhone? How many songs do you have, Mr. Alternative Music, hippy dippy, green loving, planet hugger? Because if you have more than one song, that's more songs than you need. I hate to break this to you, but it takes energy to record. Even alternative indie music takes energy to record. And it takes energy to reproduce, and it takes energy for your phone, and it takes energy to do all these things. And it's just a matter of you using energy differently than I am. I'm proud of the fact that I'm burning energy. You're trying to pretend that you're not proud of it, but you burn more energy than I do probably. By the way, Bert came down real hard on one of these events because somebody apparently at NASA is working on an electric airplane that gets a 100-mile range. And Bert stood in front of these people and said, "What happened to you? What happened to you? We used to be about laminar flow, about flying around the world on one tank of gas. You're talking about a coal-burning airplane that gets 100 miles range? You should be laughed out of the room." But it's electric. Right, where's the electricity being generated by? If it's back east, it's probably coal. You have a coal-burning airplane. Look, energy is civilization. Energy is technology. I'm sitting here using energy right now. You're using energy to watch it. I want it. I want endless energy. I want to run the air. I want my life to be 71 degrees all the time unless I decide I want it to be 74. I don't want to worry about it. I want to be comfortable. I've earned it. And when I say I've earned it, I mean my genes have earned it. I've tried to like to think that I'm contributing my small part, but my genes have earned it. We've struggled. My great-great-great-grandfathers were cotton carders. They were mill workers in textile mills in Lancashire. They're dirt poor. They died at 40. They had 11 kids. They sacrificed, scrimped, saved, and they had one little pot-bellied stove to heat the entire house. And the first thing you do in the morning is to break the sheet of ice on the little wash basin they had in the house. And before that, they were coal miners. And before that, they were peat harvesters that just sat out in the middle of the goddamn marsh and sat there with a big blade and a pitchfork and cut, compressed vegetable matter so they could burn it to stay alive. I'm the product of all of those people, and those people worked really hard to make life a little better, and I'm going to burn that energy for them. And I like the idea that there's a little silver golf ball made out of thorium, and it produces all the energy I or my entire family or my friends or all of my friends and their friends could ever use in the entire course of their entire lives. And there's no downside to it. It can't melt down. It's wonderful, beautiful. I love it. Check my privilege. Our friend Cheryl Twomey says, "You're damn right I'm checking my privilege. I check my privilege every day. I check it to make sure it's intact. My privilege belongs to the human race. It's a human privilege. It's a human privilege, and we've paid a very high price for it. And I mean to not only use it, I mean to expand it. I think we should be irrigating the deserts. You know why? Because we can. Because there's no limit to the amount of seawater out there. Just pump it. Desalinate it and pump it. What? Do you have any idea what that costs in energy? It's a lot of energy. So we got all the energy we need. I want the world to be a garden. And I want people to be able to do what they want to do. You see, if energy is free, this is going to come as a big shock to you, big progressives out there, because I know how much the idea bothers you enormously. In fact, I think this is the one thing you're actually more afraid of in the entire world. You know that guys like me like to burn energy because we're top of the food chain steely-eyed missilemen, and we fly airplanes and have big, fast cars. But the thing that really does concern you, in fact scares you, and I think you have nightmares about this, is if there were unlimited free energy, then there wouldn't be any poor people anymore. Poor people would be able to have motorhomes and ski-doos and snowmobiles and airplanes. Because if energy was really cheap, products would cost almost nothing. And then poor people get to play too, which is what I want. I want everybody to be able to play. But of course, if there are no poor people, then you don't have anything to use as a fig leaf for your own power grab. And especially the fact for you progressives, if there's no poor people anymore, then what do we need you for? In other words, if we were to have all the energy we wanted to and have the kind of economy where anybody who's got a job can afford to have just about anything they want to in terms of fun, what do we need you for? How do you get to feel better than everybody else if there's nobody better for you to feel? I mean, if there's nobody poor and downtrodden because there's enough energy for them to be able to live their lives just like everybody else, what do we need big progressive douchebags for? You're obsolete. Of course you want to limit energy. You want to limit energy because you're rich and you're educated. You're going to have all the energy you need, and if you limit energy, then those poor people, so sad. It's terrible. It's tragic what happens to them, poor things. Now you got poor people that you can use as a fig leaf for your power grab, for your power-hungry control freak minds that have to tell other people what to do. And because you're a champion of poor people, that means you can burn all the energy you want to, and that's okay because you're not one of those rich 1%ers. You're a genuinely caring person who cares about poor people on the planet. It's a giant scam, and every single day I'm more and more on to you. If we had all the energy we wanted, we wouldn't have poor people. Well, I'm going to correct myself. Of course we'd have poor people. We'll always have poor people. Do you know why we'll always have poor people? Here's why. You really need to understand this. We'll always have poor people. We'll just have rich poor people. Like in America, we have fat poor people. We'll always have poor people, and here's why. Because if you have a spectrum of people, if you have even a very flat bell curve, there's going to be the rich here, there's going to be the middle here, there's going to be the poor there. You can't cut the end off of a bell curve without getting a new bell curve, and whoever's on the left end of that bell curve is going to be the poor people. When poor Americans are richer than 93% of the rest of the population of the earth, then poor doesn't mean what you want poor to mean. One of the pithier things I ever said was in one of the first essays I wrote, but it's as good an example as anything. If you go to a club full of billionaires, the guy with $900 million is a chump, right? If it's a club of billionaires, if you've got $900 million, you're the laughingstock. You're the poor guy. You could set me up with $900 million. I could be the poorest guy in a club full of billionaires. I'd be delighted to be there. I wouldn't spend my time wondering about why they have more money than me. I'd be real grateful of what I could do with the actual money I had. This is how I live my life. That's why I never worry about rich people. I'm not a terribly rich guy, by the way. I haven't socked away money doing this. That's okay. I don't want to sock away money. I have enough money to do things like fly an airplane. That's what I want to do with my life. If I wanted to make more money, I would. I'd be in something a little more lucrative. But I never worry about people that are richer than me. It doesn't bother me. The only thing that bothers me is, can I do the things I want to do? If I can't do the things I want to do, then I have to work harder like I did to get this airplane, because I wanted the airplane, so I had to work harder for it, and I did, and I sacrificed. I didn't get anything new, and I saved it up, and then, boom, got it. It's mine. And by the way, one of the questions that has been asked when the Long Easy came up is this. Oh, I'd love to do that. I'd love to fly, Bill. I see you looking at that airplane. The airplane looks so cool. It looks like it'd be fun. I never really thought about it before, but I really want to do it, but I can't afford it. You've got to get that out of your head. First of all, if you go on Barnstormers, barnstormers.com, it's an aviation website where they sell airplanes. Just go to Barnstormers and look up Long Easy. You'll find on Barnstormers, at any given time, 4 or 5 Long Easies for sale, ranging from probably, I don't know, maybe $18,000. There's a couple for $22,000, $24,000. They get better up at the 30s. They get much nicer around 40s. You can make a pretty compelling case that you don't want to buy a bottom-of-the-line Long Easy, but you know what? There are people that will do inspections for $500 and tell you whether the plane's any good or not. And there's a lot of great recommendations out there. Now, $22,000, let's pick a number. Let's say $30,000 is the ballpark for what I paid. A little more than that, but it's in the general vicinity. That is achievable by anybody who has a job in America. How dare you say that? It's true. It's true. All you need is the discipline. If you have the discipline, you've got a good credit rating, $30,000 is not out of reach for any person who has a full-time job in this country. And when people say, well, I don't have that kind of resources, I didn't either. I learned how to fly in a glider port in Crystal, California, just on the other side of the Mojave Mountains, on the other side of the St. Gabriel Mountains, south of Mojave, and in the Mojave Desert. And I was flat broke. I was a limo driver. I had no money, none, zero, nothing. And I went out there and I worked for $50 a day, raking rocks in the desert at 115 degrees, and I got paid $50 a day and an hour of flying time. I don't know if that was an hour a week. It might have been an hour every couple of days. It certainly wasn't an hour a day. But I wanted to fly, and so I worked for it. And you can make that deal today. You can get there. You can get there if it takes you 2 years. Before that, I was a limo driver. I was taking helicopter lessons. They were fabulously expensive. $150 an hour. That was my spending money for the month. I just did it, and it's what I wanted. I didn't do anything else. I didn't have a chance to do that and fly. I gave up everything else to fly. And there you go. The planes are inexpensive. There are, and by the way, I said earlier that James Redman's Long Easy, I'm sorry, James, forgive me for that. It was a slip of the tongue. I'm going to beat the snot out of me when you see me next time. James Redman's Bearcoot is the nicest aircraft I've ever seen, and I meant it. It's the nicest airplane I've ever seen of any price. It's the nicest airplane I've ever seen. That wasn't an airplane. He didn't buy an airplane. He had plans. He had sheets of fiberglass and carbon fiber. He had a couple of molded parts. He had to work and work and work. It's all he did. All he did was build this airplane over 15, 11 years, 20 years, whatever it was. And, you know, I don't know the details of this, but when he got started, he could just go out and buy an engine. I mean, this engine's, even used engines, in low five figures probably, had to save and save and save and do things he didn't want to do because his love and his passion is in his garage. And he saved his money and he bought an engine and he put it on himself. And he didn't go to engineering school. He taught himself how to do all of this stuff. He taught himself how to do it. He has the nicest airplane I've ever seen out of love, passion, hard work, brains, and desire. And those don't cost a penny. Anybody who wants to get there can get there. Anybody. And if you don't believe me, you want to send me a message on Facebook, I'll tell you how. We'll sit down and we'll plot it out. You can learn how to fly and you can own an airplane. And these airplanes, what you get for what you pay, there's nothing like it. Just go to barnstormers.com, search for Long Easy, and keep looking. You know, some are turkeys. Most of them are perfectly fine. Some of them are spectacular. But even if you buy a turkey, as long as it's built well enough so that it's safe, it may be cosmetically ugly, but you have somebody who knows what they're doing, do the inspection. You say, yeah, the wings are solid. It's not beautiful, but it's solid. It's not going to fall apart on you. Then you spend hours and hours and hours doing what James does all the time. Make it better every day. Gives you something to do. Something tangible, you know, and not just tangible in terms of like, look at this, is the most beautiful airplane in the world. I don't know what James would get for that airplane. He's never going to get what he put into it, needless to say. I mean, he's got millions of dollars of labor into that thing. But it's not a ski trip either, you know. It's an asset, and you can sell that asset when you get tired of it or you get too old or some major emergency comes up and it breaks your heart, but, you know, you get 6 figures easily for these Bearcoots, easily. You know, some of these, a couple of $250,000, not at all out of the range for what you get. It's worth every penny. So, you know, there you go. You can get there, and you just have to understand that you can get there. We've got a couple more, I guess. Zechariah Tiemans again. What, if anything, about the Confederacy deserves to be celebrated or at least defended? The Confederates fought with incredible bravery. The Confederates fought with a great deal more dedication than the Union did. That's to be expected. The war was down there, and the war was for their independence. You know, they would talk about the Confederate armies coming north. Lee had, Army of Northern Virginia had 2 big invasion attempts, one in 1862 that culminated in Antietam and one in 1863 that culminated in Gettysburg. And both times, especially the first time, they were just described as wolves. It's like human wolves. They hadn't eaten. They had no shoes. Fully a quarter of them, at least a quarter of them, just didn't have shoes. They're on these stony roads in Pennsylvania. These guys are fighting for what they believed in. They were incredibly tough, incredibly gifted. The first half of the war, all the great generals were on the Confederate side, and the second half of the war, all the great generals were on the Union side. But Stonewall Jackson, Robert E. Lee, just pulling out miracles of just audacity. They had the audacity because they had to. They were so badly outnumbered. You know, the Confederacy produced fewer manufactured goods than New York City. New York City produced more industrial output than the entire Confederacy. And they had one rolling mill, Tredegar Iron Works, or Tredegar, however it's pronounced, in Richmond. That's it. That's all the big weapons. Everything was made in this one factory. It's all they had. The North was pounded full of things. There's an awful lot about the Confederacy that I like in terms of states' rights. And look, people say that the Civil War was fought over states' rights. True, but it was the right to keep slaves. That's not property. They thought it was property, but it's not property. So in the same way, you know, it's the same thing. I've made this case before. I think it's a compelling case, frankly. You can say that that no one had the right to go down to a plantation and take away somebody's property. And if we're talking about cows and horses, or rocking chairs, you're absolutely right. There's no justification for a war in that case. The South had a complete right to secede if it was property. But it's not property, it's people. And the argument that I think bears making is you can apply that same argument to abortion. You can say that a woman has a right to choose and that it's her body and it's none of your business. And if we're talking about, breast augmentation surgery or any of the rest of it, that is entirely their business. However, a fetus, an embryo, it's not that woman. You could take a cell you could take any cell in her body and immediately type her unique among the entire population of the world. But the fetus doesn't have her DNA. It's got its own DNA. It's a combination of her DNA and the father's DNA. It's not her body. It's in her body, but it's not her body. And if you believe that the Civil War to end slavery was a moral cause because it was people, then you have the same right to say to people, well, this isn't your choice anymore. These are people. Now that's where the argument is, right? That's it. That's where it is. Anyway, well, we're going to do one more. If we're going to do one more, I better make it count. I think I'll do two more. And these are geeky ones because it's kind of not a terribly serious show. Dave Olson wants to know, have you seen Prelude to an Axar on YouTube? It's a crowdsourced Star Trek fan film starring Richard Hatch as a Klingon and Worf's brother as the head of the Federation. It's done as a Discovery Channel retrospective on the Earth-Klingon War, and it's phenomenal. They've done it on a shoestring. I have seen it. Go to YouTube and look to Prelude to Axanar, I guess. I thought it was an Axar. Maybe it's a misspelling. It's either A-X-A-N-A-R or A-N-A-X-A-R. I knew about it before then. I didn't know about it before then. I saw it, but it turns out I'm pretty good friends with Gary Graham, and Gary Graham plays the Vulcan ambassador in that. It's done like an interview many years after the war, and they do flashbacks to the war, and it's all the history of the Federation prior to the USS Enterprise. It's after the first Enterprise of Captain Archer, but it's before Kirk's Enterprise or Pike's Enterprise. And it is spectacular, and it's beautifully acted. It's magnificently acted, magnificently shot. I do have one problem with it, and it's my problem with all of the Star Trek stuff. That was not the case in the TV show, by the way. This did not happen in the TV show. They started doing it in Next Generation, and then after Next Generation, they did it on Voyager, and then they did it on everything else. But basically, I can sum up my problem with Prelude to an Axanar or an Axar or whatever is this. It's nice, Axanar. It's nice to have a starship that can go thousands of times the speed of light. Its effective combat range is about 50 yards. That's the one thing I can't stand about all of these remakes. It was not in the TV series. You saw it on Next Generation and all the rest, and then you saw it on things like Wrath of Khan as well. These starships are engaging themselves at extreme range, in some cases a quarter of a mile. They're flying through the galaxy at multiple times the speed of light, and apparently their phasers run out if you go more than a mile away from the vehicle, and the idea of guidance on a photon torpedo is apparently something that hasn't happened yet. We had guidance on a Stinger missile the size of my desk, but we can't put guidance on a photon torpedo apparently, and God knows that if you're more than, some extreme range, massive extreme range for Starfleet, Klingon, or let's say, a mile and a half, then it's a guaranteed miss. The sight of these gigantic spaceships trying to dogfight, but not even dogfighting in the way that X-Wings do, just this kind of maneuvering like this, and then to pass over each other, and they miss each other by, 30 feet. It's ridiculous. And if you look at the original Star Trek space combat, you never saw that. You never saw the two ships in the same shot. Now that may be because they couldn't afford to do special effects. But if you look at like the classic episode, Balance of Terror, where the Enterprise is a destroyer and the Romulan bird of prey is a submarine, it's one of the best. I saw it recently. I couldn't believe how good it is. It's so beautifully written and acted. Balance of Terror is one of the best episodes ever. But you see the Enterprise, and it fires its phasers, and it fires its photon torpedoes out into the void. There's no sign of the ship out there. And then the Romulan ship gets rocked, and the Romulan ship fires its giant plasma bolt, and you never see the Enterprise because it's a long way away. Cheryl says suspension of disbelief. It's not the suspension of disbelief. I'm with the suspension of disbelief when I don't have to look at the fact that a ship that's capable of traveling thousands of times faster than the speed of light is shooting at something it can't see. That makes sense to me. You know, even in warships, battleships like the Bismarck, the exchange between Hood and Bismarck, it took place at 26 miles range. They were just specks on the horizon, and they were able to hit each other with shells. It pulls me out of the suspension of disbelief to see these things firing at a range of 100 yards. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And Prelude is a particularly egregious violator of that. You've got these warp ships maneuvering through asteroid fields, and they're shooting phasers at each other and photon torpedoes, and they're 600 yards and they miss. And I guess they're trying to get like the visual wow effect, but it's like, I don't believe it. Now, if you want to put a spaceship in a asteroid belt, then have it hide in an asteroid belt. The whole purpose of Star Trek is we're dealing with ships. We're not dealing with fighter planes. That's Star Wars. They're ships. Treat them like ships. Put them out at range and have them fire long range at each other. Make it about ship-to-ship combat, not try to make it into, fighter combat, because it's not. It just looks ridiculous. It looks absolutely absurd, and that's a big problem for me. It didn't have to be that way. It wasn't that way originally. You want to have them, like I said, you want to have an asteroid belt? Hey, they duck out, they fire off a couple shots, they pop back. Maybe a couple of incoming photon torpedoes explode against the side of the asteroid. That's cool. That's what they did in Wrath of Khan. They had the Reliant on one side of this asteroid and Enterprise on the other. Fantastic. They weren't circling around each other. Just, I don't know. Don't cross the streams is what I'm trying to say. We're going to do an accurate space battle thing. I don't know if we ever did. Meson guns and particle accelerators, charged particle, neutral particle, missiles, pumped lasers, all kinds of cool stuff there. I kind of think we did one on that. Detection is the whole thing. Yeah, it's a long story. One final one. Two final ones. Rick Manhard, that's a great name. Dude, it's like the most awesome manly name in the history of the world. They did a Mystery Science Theater episode once where they kept trying to think of like the manliest names ever. I forget what episode it was, but it was great. But Rick Manhard is a hell of a great name. I can't ever recall you ever mentioning model rocketry, so I was wondering if you ever did that as a hobby in your formative years. I did. I built every Estes model rocket there was. There were times when I got so desperate I actually built a Centauri rocket. I loved Estes, and of all the Estes rockets that I built, the Gremlin was a cool rocket. I built the Alpha like everybody else, with a wooden balsa fins. I remember the first time I launched a rocket, I about lost my mind. I just couldn't believe it. The coolest of the rockets that I personally ever built, and I still think it's the coolest one I ever saw, was the space transportation system. It was like a shuttle thing. It was a pretty tall booster with little wings on the back, and then an orbiter sat on the top of a little hook, little glider. And the thing would go up on the main booster, and it would come over the top on the apogee, and then as it came over the top, the glider would just let loose on its own, and then a parachute would pop out, and the booster would come down on the parachute, and the little orbiter would glide down. That was wild. There's another couple of really cool ones that had like a molded plastic kind of cockpit forward-facing thing. That was really just cool to do. So I love model rockets. One of the things I'm thinking about for big bat problems is I have this kind of time, usually on airline flights. I actually thought, I'm not joking sometimes about things like the Republic of Northern Idaho and weaponizing a Long Easy, and I actually thought to myself, could I devise and build an actual air-to-air missile? Could I do it? And I thought about it. If I was going to build an air-to-air missile, realistically, one that you could put on a Long Easy, could it be done? And I thought, well, if you put a couple of those big F rockets, D or F rockets, basically on a plastic tube, you'd get a mile out of that horizontally. And so how would you steer it? These GoPro cameras that they put on drones now, they've got with the boosted Wi-Fi, they're flying drones out to 2, 3, 4, 5 miles in many cases. I thought if you put a GoPro in the front of a missile that looked kind of like an AMRAAM with steering fins in the front and steering fins in the back, you put a couple of F engines up there, slick it underneath the wing of a Long Easy, and you've got a GoPro signal and just got a guy in the back seat with an iPad. And somebody recommended this to me. The way to do it is you'd have the iPad. The iPad is looking through the GoPro. It's seeing what the camera sees, and basically you put your finger on the iPad screen, and wherever you move your finger, a little reticle goes with you, and the servos steer to that point. So you get in trail behind another drone, let's just say it's a drone, Predator drone. I'm in my Long Easy. I don't particularly like these guys invading the airspace of the Republic of Northern Idaho. And you roll in behind this guy. You let that thing go off the rails. The backseater is watching through the camera. He's watching this drone appearing, and all he's doing is keeping his finger on that. And if it starts to deviate, by moving his finger to the side, it's using just common servos that they use on these, $100 RC airplanes. And you just fly it there, and inside the front of this thing behind the camera, you got a little bit of C4, let's say, and a little detonator, electric detonator, and you put a bunch of ball bearings in front of that thing, and then you fly this thing right into the back of the thing. And when you're right, last thing you see is you just hit the detonate button, and it just goes forward like a shotgun, and next thing you know, you shot down a Predator drone from a Long Easy. And I think about these things in the real world, and then I put them into the movie, because I'm going to have this Long Easy is going to be a weaponized Long Easy. Works real well for air to ground as well, by the way. You could fly a missile right off the rail on the bottom of a Long Easy, put it right over a ground target, and airburst it. And the further out you go, the wider the spread, which means the more likely you are you're going to get a kill. But the closer you get, the more powerful the punch. I think about these things because I have serious mental handicap and deep-seated emotional problems. Final question is Jeffrey Lee Devlin. What do you think of Ted Cruz blasting both Democrats and Republicans? I personally was glad to hear it. The person that attacks the GOP leadership in the same language that he attacks the Democratic leadership will be the next president of the United States. Mitch McConnell is not a Republican, and Mitch McConnell is not even a Democrat. Mitch McConnell is a lifelong politician. I don't think, I think I did the one on this, the big Borg blow-up. I don't think, has anybody ever seen Mitch McConnell and Harry Reid in the same room at the same time? It may just be a change of hairstyle and adding some ugly glasses. They're the exact same guy. They're both Buck Fury Wist. That's an awesome name, Wild Goose. They're both politicians. I sat literally shoulder to shoulder with Mitch McConnell at a lunch back in 2009, and he was bragging about how he cut $10 billion from a $4 trillion budget. And that was $10 billion over 10 years. I mean, it was something like that. Maybe it was $100 billion over 10 years. $10 billion a year from a $4 trillion budget. Proud as he could be. He lied to Ted and the rest of the Republican senators about this Obama trade deal. And I think Ted Cruz, who I admire enormously, put it as succinctly as he possibly could. He said, we're allowed to disagree in the Senate, but we're not allowed to lie to each other. In other words, if he says, here's a deal, I think you should take it, and he says, I don't want to take it, then we disagree. But if he says, no, there's no deal, so vote for this, and then you vote for it, and you turn out he lied to you, then he needs to probably go to jail. He certainly doesn't need to be, majority leader. I say things that sound really bombastic, and I know people sometimes think I say them for hyperbolic impact. In some cases I do, but sometimes I say them and I mean them. If somebody was running against Mitch McConnell, a young Democrat who had his own business, I would not only write that guy a check, I'd campaign for him. I'd much rather have a Democrat who ran his own business, who had to deal with real-world problems, than this guy as a Republican senator. There would be no Barack Obama if there was a Republican opposition. He never would have been elected if anybody had the courage to come out and say what they knew about him. If John McCain had said what was widely available to be known about Barack Obama, I think Barack Obama would have melted under the impact. And the only person who can say it is the nominee, because the press will spin everything else. But John McCain says, I think Barack Obama would make a fine president. Well, I guess I'll vote for him then, John. Why not? Ted Cruz had the courage to call Mitch McConnell a liar, because he's a liar. He lied to Cruz and he lied to the rest of the Republican senators. And when people hear you criticizing your own party, it gets them out of their trenches. You're not an ideologue anymore. You're a reasonable person. You say, the problem, by the way, it's not hard, guys. You want to win the next election. This is really simple. Just write this down. It's not about Republicans. It's not about Democrats. It's about Washington versus the people. You run against Washington, you're going to win every time. It's 10 after 8, and I think that'll do it for episode 99 of the Stratosphere Lounge. We'll talk to the guardian of the gates of fire, Eisenfire, and see what we can do about having a kind of a gala 100th episode. I wouldn't mind opening up the fantastic Stratosphere Lounge here and having guests and just kind of having a party here. I think that'd be a fun way to do it. So I don't know whether we can do that in a week, but we can probably do it within 2. In any event, it was Space Mutiny. Yeah. If you've never seen Mystery Science Theater 3000, rent it. And if you want to pick an episode, see Space Mutiny, where Mike and the bots are trying to find the manliest names they can and just keep coming, and it's just about fell out of my chair. I was laughing so hard. Anyway, that's it for the Stratosphere Lounge, episode 99. My sincere apologies for having waited, and I think it was an entire month we went without one. It just got worse and worse and worse, but we're back, and we'll be back with the actual 100th episode. Unbelievable. It's amazing what people will listen to if you don't charge them money for it. Until then, thanks again for your membership and your support. Thanks for all the kind words for when I was not feeling so great. And as always, keep looking up, and can't wait to hear what the call sign's going to be. It's going to be racist, or it's going to be, windbag or jaw flapper or something horrible like that. And they're going to enjoy it so much, and I'm going to enjoy it too, although God knows I'm going to, well, I told Vipercheck, if it's not Starlance Mock Killer or something like that, then we're going to pass the hat and get that airfare back. I'm going to be brutally disappointed. I can feel it coming. Good to see you guys. Thanks. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.